Okay, hi guys. Very glad that everybody can join us from different parts of the world for today's session of Coffee and Careers. And for any newcomers that we have out there, Coffee and Careers is the brainchild of Dr. Casey Bradley, a nutritionist and animal scientist who loves all things pigs and so much more. Casey's been a mentor of sorts to many young professionals. And one of the goals that we have at Coffee and Careers is to really create a casual learning platform to allow students to interact and learn from industry professionals regarding how they got started and where they are today. So today is actually the biggest one that we've had so far. We've got a roundtable discussion with some leading young professionals from various parts of the world. In fact, when Casey first started with Coffee and Careers, she ran a poll, and a lot of you guys requested that we feature a younger set of technical professionals who are earlier on and mid on in their careers. So I'm sure you guys will have questions. So before I introduce our guest speakers, I'd like to remind everyone to allow the conversations to flow. And then if you've got questions, please key this into the chat box so that Casey or I can address your questions with the speakers at the end of the session. So without further ado, we've got four technical experts today who are kind enough to allocate time with us. First off, we have Dr. Nathan Horn. So Dr. Horn is a research scientist with United Animal Health. He's got a master's in poultry nutrition and a PhD in swine nutrition and physiology from Purdue. So Nathan developed his passion for the swine industry during his 4-H career showing pigs. He's worked various roles with United, from formulation to nursery pig research, technical support, and swine research management. From 2016 to 2020, Nathan was employed with BioMatrix as the Director of Research and Technical Services. And then in the fall of this year, he returned to United Animal Health as a scientist within the Swine Novel Products Division. His professional interests are product development and validation, research, model development in gut health, and mycotoxin mitigation. So Dr. Horn lives in Rush County, Indiana, with his wife and daughter, Adeline. They enjoy raising and showing purebred goats, gardening, and spending time in the outdoors. Uh, Next, we have Dr. Caroline Vega. She is originally from Colombia and moved to the US to pursue her master's and PhD at the University of Illinois. She trained under Dr. Hans Stein and worked in numerous research projects related to calcium and phosphorus digestibility in pigs. She earned her PhD in 2016 and then moved to Georgia to join Evonik as Technical Services Manager for North America. And then 2 years later, she relocated to Germany to step into her present role, still with Evonik. And today she is their swine nutrition and research manager. She's published 20 peer-reviewed journals, 33 abstracts, and is working on multiple projects related to amino acids and other projects in the feed additive space related to gut health. Next, we've got Dr. Sophie Parker Norman, who is head of research and development at Volac International. Volac is a dairy-focused global company. They work with Church and Dwight for a product called Megalac, and they've got a small team of 5 covering the US. Sophie is one of 5 on that team. So she started her career on a dairy farm and obtained her PhD from a university in Wales, England. Then, after a short spell as a research scientist, Sophie made the jump into a technical role in the feed industry and has since worked internationally for a number of companies in both ruminants and monogastrics. We also have Dr. Neil Jaworski. Neil grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and developed his passion in animals and agriculture through visits to the Brookfield Zoo and also to his grandparents' grain farm in Illinois. He trained under Dr. Hans Stein, same as Caroline Vega, at the University of Illinois, and developed an interest for the use of different feed ingredients in swine diets. After completing his PhD in 2016, Neil moved to the Netherlands and began his post-academic career as a researcher with Trouw Nutrition. So today he is Trouw's global nutritionist for Database and Matrix. Neil works with a team to drive innovation in a global setting, and he acts as a gatekeeper for nutritional concepts in mixed products from premixes to feed. So, guys, thank you for joining us today. Casey, I give back the floor to you.
Well, thank you, everyone. I guess, do we need to draw straws, or who would love to go first and talk about their careers?
I'm happy to go, Casey.
I was going to say,
need a
Sophie,
volunteer.
I was
knew you
looking
were
at
going to
you
pick
in
on
your
me.
eyes,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yep, she's ready.
Okay, hello everyone. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation, Casey, to come along to this. It's a really great initiative, and just really pleased to support it. So as I was introduced, my name's Sophie Parker-Norman. I'm actually based in the UK, out of the UK for Volac International, which have about 300 employees, 5 of which are the American team. But as was mentioned, we manufacture Megalac, and that is done under license through Church & Dwight. So those of you in the US will know us through that brand in particular. So I don't know where you want me to start, Casey. Is it just a chronological?
Kind of, I mean, what we try to do is talk about, I think you were on your second or third company?
Third in the feed industry.
Yes, yeah, in the feed industry. Walk me through your decision making of why you switched roles, what you were looking for in each role, and kind of talk about that decision process as you chose your career and you chose your path that you're in.
Sure, yeah. I think that, if we start at university, I mean, I did my bachelor's degree in animal science, absolutely loved it, kind of fell in love with science at that point, and particularly applied sciences. And then from there, I actually worked on dairy farms for a number of years, about 6 years in total. So got the real practical experience, and then did my PhD in immunoepidemiology of mastitis in dairy cattle. And after that, I did a short period of postdocing. I always planned to kind of go into industry, but I thought I'd at least have a go at postdocing. But I think, to be honest, I thought it would be a good fit for me to come into the feed industry, because having this kind of dual outlook of being actually someone who's working on farm, understanding how dairy systems work, and also understanding the science, I really had a passion for the kind of applied science, and I really wanted to try and bridge the gap of what was going on in academia and actually bring it to applications in the real world that can improve dairy production. So I think that that's probably the first point to make. I remember having a conversation with someone at university saying, how long should I really be a postdoc before I leave? And I think that it depends on your career. It's always good if you're thinking at this point, do you want to stay on in academia or do you want to come into industry? I think it's good to get some experience as a research scientist or postdoc or some similar role. But it's also, it's never too soon, I don't think, to make the jump into industry, because there's a lot of, as you can see on this call today, all of us are involved in research, and there are a lot of research opportunities where you can publish in industry as well. So I think that was probably the first point. I then went on to AB Vista, which is where I met Casey Bradley, and I was working there as in the global tech services team. So AB Vista, you might know them as an enzyme company, predominantly monogastric company. They also had a small ruminant business. And my first role was in the tech services team, really doing a lot of monogastric stuff, which Casey could tell you, for me, that was a bit of a step outside of my comfort zone, but it was a fantastic experience. And it was a great company to start my career with, because it was really truly an international company. And, I got so many opportunities to travel across Asia, Europe, the Americas, and I really kind of learned about how different cultures work within industry in that role. And that was a fantastic kind of development piece for me. I then actually in AB Vista got a promotion to the ruminant team, which I was pleased about, and joined them as a product manager, but also doing some technical support regionally in the US. So I spent a lot of time in the US. I do have family in Montana, but I never worked in Montana, but I did get to about 25 other states with that particular role, trying to kind of build the ruminant brand in the US, which was a whole lot of fun, let's say. And then from there, really, I just wanted to try and develop my career a bit more. And, you know, I think that when it's your first job in the feed industry or whatever industry you end up going into, it's good to stay around for kind of 3 to 4 years and then try to think of what your next step might be, because, you know, these steps really do develop your career and develop you as a person. So I moved to another company, which is a French company called Techna France, and I was actually their first British employee, so really trying to start the business in the UK and Ireland, in my home countries again. I also had to leave my cowboy boots at home, Casey, for that one, but otherwise I get some strange looks over here. But that was a really good experience because it just took me closer to the nutrition. So I was really getting in the deep end, doing formulations, using a formulation software that was developed by the company I was working for based on the INRA models. So I'd moved away from CNCPS and started working with INRA, which was a change of scenery, to say the least. But it got me really close to kind of the nutrition and understanding how to put matrix values on products and use them and advise customers on that. So that was a really good learning as well. And then about this time last year, I started having conversations with Volac International. To be honest, it's a company I always wanted to work for. One of their manufacturing sites was just down the road from my university, Aberystwyth in Wales. So I'd always known about them and I'd always used their products on farm in the past. So I was approached about this role of head of research and development for the animal nutrition team. And I was successful with that. And I started in January of this year. I managed about 2.5 months in the office before I was moved to my home office because of the pandemic. But this is just a great role. I feel like the steps that I've taken previous to arriving at this point in my career have really kind of built me and expanded my horizons really in terms of understanding nutrition on an international level. And now I'm just looking to kind of really take the next steps in innovation at Volac. We're a manufacturing company, so we make protected feed fats. We also make calf milk replacers, and we also make bacterial silage inoculants as well. So there's a lot of capability for product development here. So I'm just looking forward to the future and the direction that we're going in.
Great story and great points that you made, that 3 to 4 year mark before you jump to your next role. I think that's good. I'm going to do a coin flip, and I think Illinois comes before or Indiana in the alphabet, if I can remember right. So how about let's have Neil go from that standpoint next.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I guess along those lines, there's a saying in Illinois, why does the corn lean to the west in Illinois? And if I get it right, it's Indiana, or Iowa sucks and Indiana blows. I think that's the right one. So that's a good one for Nathan over there in Indiana. But yeah, thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here with all of you. Yeah, I think I'll just start with some of the initial steps in my career. And the first one is going to university and coming from those suburbs of Chicago with a passion for animals and a little bit of ag background with my grandparents' farm. I thought there were only 3 things I could do if I wanted to work with animals. That was be a veterinarian, be a zookeeper, or be a farmer. And so I made the choice to go to the State University at Illinois and study animal science just because I thought that's what you studied if you wanted to be one of those 3 people. But that's where I learned that there's so many other careers that an animal scientist can have. And that's where I developed my passion for nutrition, met Dr. Stein, started working in his lab. And then the other great thing is that animal science is a very small industry, or at least we're very close. So I shared an office with Caroline through my graduate studies, so I know Caroline very well. But also Nathan Horn influenced me a lot. He was actually my supervisor at an internship at United Animal Health for 2 summers there. So I also have two of the guest speakers to thank for inspiring me to pursue my passion for animal agriculture and really focus on nutrition. Go to graduate school with Hans Stein, and then as everybody kept telling me, because I did my bachelor's at Illinois, my master's, and then my PhD, that I was very inbred and I didn't have a lot of other experiences, let's say. And that's where at a conference I met the R&D director of Trout Nutrition, Leo Den Hartog, and made that connection there. So then when I finished my PhD, reaching out, different positions, and that opportunity came up, and I thought he was going to say, okay, we have a position in Illinois for you, no problem, but actually it was to move to the Netherlands. And I think that, it was a difficult choice to make because, of course, from Illinois, I did everything in Illinois and that's my home. But I wanted to learn new things. I really wanted to get a more global perspective of the industry. And in all honesty, I wanted to see what it's like to formulate a swine diet, corn and soy. See, I use a ingredient here in Europe. Then at that point is okay, industry, and why not now, or postdoc.
I think we're having some issues, Neil, with your feed, and we're getting some bandwidth. So I shut my camera off to maybe help. Neil, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, sorry. All right, you're there. So keep speaking.
That video
the video that's froze. So.
Yeah. But anyways, so I moved to the Netherlands mostly because I wanted a different experience, something new. I wanted to learn some new things, get more of a global perspective on the industry. And then I like to travel. My wife and I like to travel, so we thought this was a perfect opportunity to move to Europe, to see Europe, do some traveling, and those kind of things. So I think for now that's good enough. We can move on to the other speakers, and happy to answer any questions or get more of a discussion going.
I have some questions for you when we have a discussion. So, but I'm gonna go back to, because you cited Nathan as your supervisor, I kind of gonna switch gears, Caroline, a little bit and have Nathan go and kind of walk you through that and that connection in your career, because it's I think a lot of good experiences you've had as well in your career, Nathan.
Okay, I think that was a transition to me. I'm a little dense, so I think that's what you were doing there, Casey, right?
Correct. It's your turn.
Okay, great. So, and I'll try to be brief. Sophie and Neil have done a great job kind of setting the stage, and there's a lot of similarities I think that you're going to see between all of us with how we got to where we're at. So, starting out for me, just like all the others here, it started out in school and academia. I went to Purdue with the aspirations of being a veterinarian, and I was on the track to be a veterinarian, a swine practitioner, given my background in agriculture, and was actually accepted to vet school at Purdue. And at the time, even up to my probably junior, I was a horrible undergrad student. I'm just gonna, I think any professor would say that. I mean, I had good grades, but I was a horrible student. And I had other things on my mind at that time. And so that weren't academic related. So when I was actually a senior, I took Dr. Adiola's monogastric nutrition class, and I had an awesome file. And I not besides the file, I just really loved the science and the physiology. And Dr. Adiola started recruiting me throughout the semester. And this was already after the fact, of course, that I had been accepted to veterinary school. And, one thing that was really appealing to me about graduate school that I wish I didn't know about was I guess the freedom, academic freedom. It seemed less rigid. And I seemed like I could get a lot more deep in the weeds on how things worked. And that was very appealing to me. And so I made the decision, actually, the day I turned in my final exam to Animal Science 522, that I would go to graduate school. And so that's how, I got started. I completed a master's in monogastric nutrition in his lab. And then at that point, I had been at Purdue for, I believe, 7 years, and I needed a change. I really couldn't find a PhD program that really excited me, but there was a job opportunity that came available. And it was at United Animal Health at that time. The company was called United Feeds, I believe. And I started actually at the Sow Farm managing research trials here in Indiana. And then within about a month, I was moved to the office and a research support role. And at the time, it wasn't, the most glamorous position, but thinking, back, I am so thankful for the experience that I got during that first set of my employment at United Animal Health, because I learned, school set me up, my master's and then later my PhD. That set me up to have the basics. I had the, academic foundation of experimental design, physiology, nutrition, but going to United Animal Health the first go round and being involved in the details of running the trials, doing formulation and so forth, really helped me get in sync with, what was applied in terms of, what the swine nutrition and feed additive industry, nutrition industry was expecting. And it was a great experience. However, after about 4 years, I knew that I had that drive to be in a different leadership role. And I knew that, a PhD was going to help me get to that point in a quicker fashion than if I didn't have a PhD. And there was a great opportunity at Purdue with Dr. Adiola that allowed me to stay as an employee at United Animal Health and pursue my PhD and not uproot my family at the same time. And it was, again, just one of those things, thinking back of how lucky I was, to have that opportunity. And so I pursued a PhD about midway after my employment, where I'm at now, in digestive physiology and immunology in Cola's, Dr. Ajuan's lab and Lai's lab. And that was just a great experience. And I could say that, looking back again, I got so much more out of my PhD program. And part of it was I was really immature, academically and professionally younger on. But having that industry experience and a family and so forth helped mature me. And I just really, I'm really thankful that, I waited 4 years in between my master's and my PhD. So after completing my PhD, I came back to United Animal Health, and that my role changed a few times, but I was leading product development segments in the nursery program at United Animal Health, and was responsible throughout my PhD. And the most notable product that you all may hear about is Engage M or Immobilize, and those are projects that I led, which are mycotoxin mitigants at United Animal Health. And then and again, being in a leadership role was different, but something that I was really thankful for. And a subsidiary company or startup company of United Animal Health had a unique opportunity. And a good friend of mine owned that company, which was started up by the Swisher family, which owned United Animal Health. And his name was Guy Miller. And he basically had a terminal illness. And he said, Nathan, if you're going to make a career change, I want you to lead my company in 5 years. 3 to 5 years. And so I made the transition to BioMatrix. It's a separate company from United Animal Health, but I consider BioMatrix to be like a second or third cousin. They're related way back. And so I made that transition, and there was an unfortunate set of events where, Guy did an experimental treatment and he passed away about 2 months after I made the career transition. And at that point, I became the lead of the technical department. And that was a great experience. It was a tough experience, but a great experience as well, because one, I got to be at a small company with 25 people, and I got to learn, the efficiencies that you can do at a small company in the decision-making process versus a big company. And that experience is something I'm really thankful that I had. And then through a series of events, I also became president of that very small company for about a 6-month period. And I'm also thankful for that experience. One is I know that what I don't want to do long-term professionally in my career. And two, I got to see a different aspect with development of employees, the finance side and so forth that I probably wouldn't have experienced in a different scenario. And I'm just very, very thankful for that too. And BioMatrix was transitioning to a different type of company, which was great, but wasn't really in alignment with what I'm really passionate about, which is teaching and research. And at the same time, there were some internal changes at United Animal Health, and there was a senior scientist position open. And so this fall, I went ahead and made the decision to move back, to the grandparent company. And I'm now in a position as a senior scientist. My primary responsibilities are internal support for our other scientists and teams, and novel products development and research model development. So in a nutshell, I'm happy to take any questions, but in a nutshell, that's kind of how I landed where I'm at now.
Awesome. And to wrap up the panel, we got some good comments coming in and questions, but Caroline, can you tell your story? Because you started international in college. Nathan, Neil, kind of as they called themselves, were a little inbred for family reasons and different things. But you have, came here to the US from Colombia, and then you decided to go to Europe. So kind of walk through your career and your mindset about those changes.
So can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay. I'm kind of new with Zoom. All right. Hi, everyone. And thank you, Casey, for having me here. It's an honor for me and to be with these 3 other speakers. And it's great to be with Neil. As he already said, we spent some years, almost 6 years of our lives together in a small room every day. So that's why he moved to Netherlands and I came to Germany to stay close to him still. But yeah, I come from Colombia, and my story is a little bit different because I speak Spanish, and when I went to US, my English was very poor and I had no idea of a lot of words, and my English was very basic. So for instance, I knew if you say how are you, but when people was saying to me what's up or how's it going or all that, I didn't know what they were saying. So I also have to thank Neil that he helped me to improve my English. And if I have some mistakes, it's because of him as well. I'm just kidding.
Fair enough.
All right. So starting from Colombia, yeah, I did my animal science studies there. I knew I wanted to study something related with animals, but I knew I didn't want to be a vet. No offense, but like I just didn't feel comfortable dealing with sick animals. I feel like emotionally fragile, and I wanted to deal with healthy animals. So that's why I went to production. And it happened that I was in Colombia, and Dr. Stein came, and thank God, like it was a great connection there. So he offered me if I can go to his lab for 6 months or 1 year internship. So I told him I will try, and I went there for 6 months. And when I was there, I realized something really, really beautiful that I never imagined. And I saw that I could do a master's and PhD with him. He will not only pay my studies, but he also will pay me like a monthly salary. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a wonderful land. Like, I cannot believe like you are getting paid to do your master's and PhD. Like, I mean, I was coming from my country, and I was like, this is a great opportunity. So I told him, what should I do if I want to do that? So he told me, study English very hard, and like take the exams and do your best. So in my internship, I study really hard English at nights, in the weekends, all the time. And I was doing experiments with digestibility trials. So I also learned techniques. And then after those 6 months, I passed the exam, and I joined Dr. Stein in his lab as a student. And it was a challenge because all the classes were in English, and they were using like all these technical terminologies like statistics and biochemistry and all that. So like really I had to push myself really hard at the beginning, but like I had great support, and also Neil was on my side, and Dr. Stein, and I have many other friends there, and also my family. So it was great. And I did my master's and PhD. So Dr. Stein told me, like, what do you want to work on? So I told him, like, if I can work on something that I can feel like I'm helping in an area that there is not too much research, it will be great for me, like to have like kind of impact or something like that. So he told me, like, I have the perfect project for you. So he gave me this calcium digestibility because there was no research about that. So that's why I study mainly calcium digestibility and phosphorus interactions with phytes as well. And it was funded by AB Vista. And it was great. After my PhD, I was ready to work. So like I had some options as postdoc as well, but I knew I wanted to go to industry. So I said, no, I want to go to industry. So I started applying for different jobs, and thank God Evonik hired me. And I was a little bit afraid because like I had this big experience on minerals, and I had not much on amino acids. And I was like, how can they choose me? Like how, like why they chose me? And then, but like I really appreciate they give me the chance, and I was able to learn and all that. So it was a great opportunity for me. And when I was doing my job as a technical service manager, I discovered that I was really passionate about research because I had to do some tasks still on that. And when they opened the position here in Germany, they said that if I wanted to apply, and I was like, oh my God, that's so great. But like I was in my second year, I mean, yeah, of my technical service role. So I was like feeling a little bit bad because I'm like, I just started here, and I mean, it will be like leaving everyone, just starting and moving again. So, but my boss really supported me, and he wanted me to be happy. So he said, just do it and let's see what happens. So yeah, I apply, and thank God I got it. I had to move here to Germany. So like again, new country, new culture, new language. So now I'm learning German. Um, and it's exciting. I am really thankful. And the job I do, I really like it. It's about research. We do in different aspects, amino acids, also gut health products. And yeah, I an advice I give you is don't limit yourself. Like, don't be afraid, and like take risk and just do it. It's always better to try. And if you fail, don't worry. Like, at least you try and move another in another field or something. But yeah, don't limit your capacities. You can do it. That's it.
Well, thank you. I'm going to let Trish take over on the question, but I think the one we're going to start with, because I like this question. So we have from Jordan, Nathan. He wants to thank you for sharing your experiences, but he's curious. You made that I wasn't mature enough to go for my master's, my PhD, and kind of, what does that mean? What was that benefit? And I think you and I both have similar stories to where and Sophie as well, we worked in the industry in between degrees and things like that. How has that made it better for you?
Of course, it's going to mean a little bit different to everybody, I think. But for me, I think what was lacking at the time when I completed my master's was to be able to connect the dots. Of course, my phone hasn't rang for like 2 months, and it rings right now. But anyways, home phone. But anyways, so the ability to connect the dots. So I understand the research and I understand the science, but what does that mean practically? And I lacked that, ability to do that at that point. And that's really what going to industry and being in the research associate role really helped me. It kind of helped me broaden my perspective. And then going back to graduate school was completely different because I could see at the beginning where I wanted to be at the end. And I think that's something that was really fundamental. And I personally thought my PhD program was challenging, but it wasn't any harder than working every day in the industry for sure for me, because I had that perspective. And my opinion, and would be that if you have the chance and your situation allows, I would recommend at least 2 years, of industry experience. And I think that most of the professors I work with know that I think it should be a requirement personally, but I think it just adds a lot of perspective. And actually it makes, I think, it adds time, but I think it, makes things a lot easier when you get into a leadership role if you have that perspective.
I couldn't have said that better. Trish, I'll let you start with the questions.
Okay, we've got a number of questions actually. So let's start with the questions that we've got for all the speakers. So it seems common for many to go internationally early in their career to gain experience in work life and in culture. So what do you think is the best advice to give a fresh grad, like a PhD, looking for and applying to international employment?
Maybe I can try and answer that. I think that it's just so important to look at the company that you're applying to. Is it a kind of company that really has got an international coverage and market reach? And if you're going in 9 times out of 10, if you're going into like a technical type role, centrally within a company, you're going to have to travel to different regions, and quite often companies will push that. I mean, you know, who knows post-COVID world what it will be like. I'm sure we will do less traveling around the world, but even so, you know, I think the key is just making a good selection on that first company you're going to. I have friends who did very similar PhDs and have gone into industry, but they don't work in international companies. They're kind of UK-based companies, and they've not had the same experience. And it depends what you want, you know, but if you do want that international travel, then I think the selection of the company that you're working for is really important.
And we've got one question actually that's for Sophie, Caroline, and for Neil. Just curious, how would you differentiate the US market versus the UK versus the European markets? Like, what would be the difference for that?
So I once did some nutrition for 20,000 cow dairy in the US, and the biggest one I've done in the UK is for 400 cows. So that's the difference. I think that, you know, if I speaking from the ruminant perspective, agriculture is advancing. We live in this accelerating world of technology, so things are getting more technical. And 9 times out of 10, you'd be speaking in the US to a ruminant nutritionist on these big herds who's got a PhD in nutrition. You know, it's getting more technical, and the world is going in that direction. I also spent some time working in Poland when I was with AB Vista, and the average herd size there is 70 cows. You know, so the different countries move at different speeds. The US has had a lot of consolidation around the ruminant industries and these huge herds, you know, which to me is really quite exciting. So I think the difference is the speed of this consolidation within the industry from a ruminant perspective.
Yeah, I'll just add on the monogastric side, in my perspective, I think, the first thing that I notice a difference as a nutritionist is the wide variety of ingredients that Europeans work with compared to in the US. That's one thing, and then also the different approaches to regulation. And Casey, please stop me if my Wi-Fi is not working. You know, they invented Wi-Fi in the Netherlands, but it's not working that great here. It's funny, huh? But I'll, just continue on that basis. How government regulations play a role. So in Europe, and especially in the Netherlands, the government really pushes regulations on the industry to try and almost push for change, like basically banning antimicrobials in 2009, where the US just did that maybe 2 years ago. So they're on the forefront of that. So the government is really pushing the regulations, whereas in the US, it's really consumer driven. So the consumers are still the ones who are making these change or telling the industry to change. That's a different perspective, because they're in Europe, the research is really driven, well, is partially pushed by these government regulations, whereas in the US, it's more of, I guess I would say, freedom to operate there. So that's been an interesting perspective that I've experienced, because they work in 2 different ways. Both get the job done, but it's finding a balance between the 2, I think, is the best way. But anyways, Caroline?
Yeah, I agree with Neil, and like on those lines, I mean, it's also the regulations also in nitrogen excretion or like phosphorus, and like here in Europe, that's why there is more pressure on low protein diets than in other parts of the world. But there are like also advantage of applying these concepts, and especially in gut health related benefits. So the same as Neil was saying, regulation also, like in 2022 with the zinc oxide here in Europe, we are feeling the pressure of how are we gonna help the industry to fill out that gap and to try to provide alternatives for the producers. So that's why we are also like pushing ourselves on that area on gut health solutions here in the company, versus other countries that they don't have these type of regulations. So I think Neil addressed same points as I will.
Can I add something to bring this into context of career, no matter if what we're studying? I think we all need to leave our egos at the door. Americans get this reputation that we're arrogant and cocky. I have that reputation to some Europeans as well. And every system's different. Every country's different. There's lots of cultural differences, religious drivers, but what you'll find is most people come together and want to work with you, but you got to leave the ego there. You got to come and meet people in the middle. And no matter where you come from, I can tell you, I've worked in so many different systems in pork production, for instance. It's not the same for everyone, and your solutions aren't going to be the same for everyone. So you can take that into your career as a animal scientist or as a person, and if you're open to meeting new cultures, being part of that, this it's endless. And that's kind of why I have a variety of people. Nathan's had a family, raised a family early in his career, and I brought him on for that perspective. And some of these other ones who Sophie, worked on very small dairies, to came in and, started working in very large dairies in the US as an international person and was very successful. And Neil and Caroline jumping and being very successful in different environments. And I think the key between all four of these is leaving the ego at the door and coming to work in the situation that you're given.
I think, Kezzy, can I just add something to that? Because I think you make a really good point. And, with this international travel, definitely agree, you've got to leave your ego at the door because cultures are so different. But what I absolutely love about the animal industry is that wherever you go in the world, if you're talking to someone who's got an animal science and ag kind of background, pretty soon you can figure out some common ground, and you can form a relationship upon that. And that's actually, if I were to pick one thing that I love about my career, it's that people interaction.
I always say that I chose the career because I loved pigs, and pigs taught me how to love people.
Caroline, we actually have a question for you from Katie. So she is really inspired to hear about your journey and how you've transitioned with the
Thank
company
you.
post-graduation. Her question is, how did you embrace that opportunity to transition from a technical services role to a research manager role? Like, what skills do you feel you learned both in school and in the industry that have helped you prepare for a management role?
I think, for me, was easier the transition from technical to research, because research I was doing in my master's and PhD. So now I feel like a fish in the water. It was more challenging for me when I went from grad school to technical role. Like, that's where it hit me really hard. uh, because I was feeling like I was sometimes speaking in a different language, and I had to deal with like sales representatives that they don't have the scientific background we have, and like we had to visit customers and all that and talk with people that they they may understand some things but not fully, and like we needed to speak the same language. Why is that important to consider? Like, it's not only about price, like you don't have to make decisions just on that. You need to, yeah, cost is important, but like sometimes like you can have extra benefits, and you have to prove it to different people. And yeah, it was there, like it was a hard transition for me, but I mean I think people know that you are new, so they are patient. But like, yeah, you are feeling the progress slowly, and yeah, the most important is to be surrounded by good people, good good colleagues, I think is very important.
Yeah, and I'm gonna dive into that because I know Katie, and I think I know where that's coming from Katie a little bit. So Neil and Caroline, you've both got promotions in your company. Sophie and Nathan's jumped companies to get promotions. Let's hear both sides of those stories of how do you push to get that next position in your career.
Yeah, for me, it was identifying the opportunity. That's the first thing, of course, and then having the conversation and being willing to say, and this is where maybe you still leave the ego at the door, but you have to boast about yourself a little bit, and you have to say why you really think you're right for that new role, and also demonstrate the things that you've learned that will help you in that new role. So I think that the most important thing is to be willing to have that open conversation with your manager, to say, hey, what do you think about this position? And that's how it worked for me. I approached my manager about the promotion or the open position, and really just said, what do you think? Do you think I'm right for this position? I think I'm right. These are things that I think are my strengths and why the position fits me really well. He was very supportive of it, and then you have him on your side to move forward on that. I think that's the most important thing, just have that open conversation.
Flip the table from Sophie or Nathan to comment from changing roles to get that push in your career.
Happy to go. I feel like I'm talking a lot, Casey. It usually happens, but I think that, you know, as Casey said, most of my steps have been to different companies, and I do remember the first step to a different company, and that was quite a scary step, I have to say, you know, because I think Caroline mentioned it earlier. You're kind of comfortable with the people that you're with, and you've kind of got to know your team, and you know how it works, and you're finally starting to understand how the feed industry works, you know, and so to take that step to a completely new company, new kinds of products, sometimes new areas of nutrition, like it was in my instance, is quite a big step. I think that, you know, once you've done it, you don't tend to regret it. You know, it's a good thing, good things come from it. But if I were to pick one thing that was kind of really useful advice to being hired into a promoted position by a new company, I would probably say working on strategy to sort of progress your career. You know, if you've got a background in science, you've got a PhD, etc., then obviously, you know, you're a technical person, you understand science, and employers know that. But what you really need to do to progress your career and make those steps is to get involved with strategic work, kind of expand your understanding of how business works. And for me, that's what's been helpful, is doing that strategy work, you know, getting involved in areas of the business that weren't just R&D or the technical team. And that's really helped me take that step.
I think Nathan could comment on this from some of our conversations, learning business.
Yeah, I'd say that I'm glad you went before me, Sophie, because that was very well said. And so I can appreciate that. And, you know, I guess from my end, it's a little bit different scenario, but, you know, one thing I think we should all aspire to, you know, I came back to United, we're all still friends. And so as we transition through this we all maintain very professional relationships. And, you know, I think that to me, that's the key, how I would look at it. Is strategy and relationships, and being able to develop the relationships in-house and out of house, and knowing, you know, when it's time to make a change and when the change is right. The other thing is, I guess, like, this is much easier said. It's easy for me to say this now. It's easier for all of us to say this now. I probably couldn't have said this, you know, 10 years ago, maybe when I was just getting out of grad school. But, you know, worry more about, I think if you're really passionate about what you do, and I don't care, you know, about what it is within you, but if you're really passionate about what you do and it differentiates you, then it's going to set up the stage to start developing those relationships, and then knowing, the industrial psychologists would call it emotional intelligence, right? knowing when the time is to have the conversations, when the time is not to have the conversations, and to be more in the background and just chug along and shine, through work and so forth. So I don't know, I'd say too, so passion. I'm a very impatient person. I mean, I am. And so that's why probably staying in the same organization for about longer than 4 years has been a struggle, at least as I was maturing and, professionally. And so it depends on, your patience level and really the organization, I would say that you were within. And I think if you were to talk to United Animal Health Management, they would, probably agree with me that it was best that I left at that time and got this other experience and perspective. And they're much happier to have me back now with that experience and perspective from a very small business, especially on the business and management side. So I don't know if that answers your question, Casey, but I guess that'd be kind of my take on it.
Yeah, well, that sets my stage before we take a final question. Trish, I want to just make a short announcement. We're still in the planning phase, but based on this Coffee and Careers as we grow, I'm going to be starting to, with a partner. I'll let her announce it and let her have that here in the future. But we're going to set up small groups of mentor mentees. But it points out, even I notice in graduate school, you stick with the people you go to school with. And through Coffee and Careers in my pilot program, I'm really trying to help you guys connect and create groups outside of your university and maybe even outside of what you study. And I think that's really important. Nathan and I had some unique experiences to where, we were involved in a lot of research with our roles because I worked full time and went to grad school. Nathan worked for United and got his PhD. So we're involved in a lot of different projects. And I think sometimes graduate students, they wonder why they can't get jobs because they've only studied amino acids or they only studied phytase and they didn't reach out. Carolyn got the job with AB Vista because AB Vista made a or Caroline didn't get a job with AB Vista. I'm sorry. She didn't get a job with AB Vista, but she reached out to the network and got into that. I would have loved to hire her, but Evonik got lucky and got her. But she took a step out to network with professionals. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here with Coffee and Careers is get outside of just being a minerals expert, get outside of being an amino acid expert or a cattle expert. Sophie, you've worked with non-ruminants as well. And learn your different strengths and build that network in-house and out of house. And I think that's other skills will come from that. And I think that's just what I want to state. And we're going to be working on a program to help you force you outside of your university and get you hopefully some professionals to work with you and mentor you as well. So that's our next phase of this project coming forward here for 2021 early. So you'll be hearing more about that shortly. With that, we do have a couple more minutes for another question, Trish.
Okay, I guess this is for everyone, including you as well, Casey. From a career development standpoint, what's the one thing you didn't do or feared doing, but wish you did back in grad school?
I'm going to let the speakers take that one.
For me, looking back now, the one regret is really I focused a lot on nutrition and really heavy nutritional classes. And actually, I was scared of taking immunology classes or disease classes, kind of more like veterinarian classes, you would say. I always told myself, well, it's just because they're veterinarians. So I'm a nutritionist. I don't want to learn that. Maybe it's not my interest. But now, the more I learn, nutrition and immunology and health, they go together a lot. And actually, you see, United, they changed their name to include animal health for a reason. It's because nutrition plays such a role in that. So that's my one regret. That I had learned more and taken the time to listen to veterinarians to a greater extent.
That's really interesting you say that, Neil, because I did my PhD in immunoepidemiology and then went into the feed industry thinking, crikey, I'm not a nutritionist, you know. So then I had to learn the nutrition post leaving academia. But I think it's an interesting point, isn't it? And you should be as broad as you can be. And also you shouldn't tie yourself down to what your PhD subject is. You know, actually, I found that going into industry with an immunology background, I did a lot of statistical analysis and modeling in my PhD and in the postdoc, and as a result, I could use that as a strength. So I would say the same actually is kind of not trying to be more broad. I guess the other thing I would say is I didn't spend enough time in the social clubs. I was a bit too serious, but I think we're all a bit like that.
I'll add on that what Sophie, social clubs and things. I think we both talked about crossing disciplines, but I didn't invest in my speaking abilities. I didn't invest in learning about emotional EQ. I didn't invest in learning about business. I totally regret all that. And I was fortunate with Comeback. They put me through the Dale Carnegie program, and that changed things for me. That changed my path. But if you're an introvert, you have to learn to be an extrovert. If you're not good at presentations or your English is not good, as Caroline said, you have to work on that. That's other development you need. And you need to find, nobody's going to coach you or mentor you to do that. You have to be willing to do that yourself sometimes and seek out different programs and different skills that make you hireable and valuable.
Yeah, for me, I think I had an amazing time in university. So the only thing I regret maybe is not having too much background on business. However, in Colombia, we have a very good, yeah, like different subjects where we touch bases on different areas in the whole production system. So like I feel like that was good, but I will like to have more like in the US on that, because when you work for these companies, it's not just like you cannot isolate just in research. You have to think how this will benefit the customers, like because at the end they need to make money out of it too. So what are the points you need to consider? And yeah, like all this economic analysis and all that will help you. And also I was very fortunate to be always surrounded by international people. So I think this was, I encourage you, if you are like just focus on one type of people, try to open more, because this is an international industry, and you will learn that there are different cultures, there are different ways to see things, and you have to be tolerant. And I think this was amazing for me, and that's maybe why I'm feeling comfortable now. Like I can live here in Germany or in US or wherever, and I adapt very quickly.
Yeah, mine won't be much different. And I know we're getting close on time, but I'd say my biggest regret was being in such a hurry. The whole time I was in graduate school to be finished, and so taking the time to do everything that everyone else just mentioned, with developing relationships, social networking. What I am most thankful for, which wasn't the question, but what on the flip side was, by accident, developing relationships in the food science department and the biology department and chemistry and so forth. And actually, that's been very, very helpful for me professionally and a differentiator. Right, for me, especially in my career now at United, for example, I learned cell culture when I was getting my PhD, and so that's a differentiator compared to a lot of other candidates, that we're hiring, that would be typical out of the animal science department. And those things are really beneficial.
I Thank